Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. This is one of my favorite quotes from the book The Art of War and Sun Tzu. And what we find in the digital marketing space today are companies struggling to find marketing ROI. And when we dig in, we find that they are simply executing tactics without a strategy. Here's what's happening most of the time when our company comes in to work with established business owners. We'll find a history of someone doing SEO things. We'll find a history of spot campaigns on Facebook or Instagram or Google. We'll see in their CRM or their marketing automation tool like HubSpot, for example, histories or remnants of email marketing campaigns. But holistically, is it all working together? 72% of the time, the answer is no. Welcome to the MindShift podcast. I'm your host, Darrell Evans. And for the last 14 years, I have been helping companies, small, medium, and large, exponentially grow to the tune of over $300 million in revenue. And in today's episode, I want to talk about some of the challenges that companies like you, established businesses, are having generating a definitive, pronounced, and clear marketing ROI. You see, this problem isn't your problem alone. It is in many established companies that we've been working with over the last decade and more who have grown their businesses in old traditional ways. Maybe that was billboards, maybe that was radio, maybe that was TV, maybe that was trade shows, maybe that was just ground and pound with an outside sales force. And today, you know that you've got to have a digital first approach. Today, you recognize that you must adapt to this modern era of marketing and digital dominance. Otherwise, you risk being out of business. And while you recognize that, many of you are still missing the pieces. Like Sun Tzu said, you're approaching it from a tactical standpoint without realizing that there are several layers above that that must be in place for you to confidently produce a digital marketing ROI. Most established companies who approach this conversation around digital marketing ROI will think that if they just put a new dollar in, they're going to get $3 out. And in all fairness, it's not your fault because there's many marketers on this channel, as well as in your email inbox, as well as on LinkedIn, who as well as call you and have you believe that for every dollar you spend on Google Ads, you're just going to get a linear $3 out. Well, that's not exactly how it works. There are actually three distinct phases to this digital marketing ROI equation. First, you have short-term ROI. Short-term ROI are going to be the things that you can actually see now from what we consider to be direct response tactics, which means if we run an ad today, we might see a certain number of leads today. If we run a certain email campaign with a certain call to action in it, we might see a certain click-through rate and a certain conversion rate today. So there's this idea of a short-term ROI, but it may or may not always equal dollars. And that's where a lot of you get frustrated. Secondly, is what I would call your midterm ROI. And your midterm ROI, I'd like to use an analogy. It's almost like planting seeds that are going to harvest at some point in the future. Planting an investment today that's going to show a return on investment in the future. Perfect example. Many of us who have 401ks or financial investments know that if we start putting $100 a month into our account, we're not going to have $1 million next month. Well, a lot of times in digital, we don't recognize what that midterm investment strategy looks like. And what I'll share with you is this. The midterm investments that you make in digital marketing that'll prove an ROI in the midterm are going to be the investments that you make in your content and what we would call your digital assets. When you start to improve and plant your subject matter expertise into this digital landscape, into this modern digital marketplace, you're not necessarily going to see an ROI on that today. Right now, I'm looking at you in the screen right now, recording this episode for you, an established business owner. And the ROI of my doing this right now and sharing this with you and looking you right through this camera and resonating with where you stand in this conversation isn't going to yield an ROI back to me or my company today. You might be here for the very first time. And if you are, thank you, because you could have been anywhere in the world today and you're here with me and I'm grateful. But the work that we put in to push our content, to plant our seeds, to put our asset models together in our digital marketing architecture is going to be a midterm ROI investment. But so many of you get frustrated because it isn't immediate. It's not like a light switch where we can just go flip it on and get light. We have to be careful to understand that this is phase two in the ROI cycle. Phase three is the long-term side of the digital marketing ROI equation, right? So we think about it again, going back to the planting, the sowing, and the reaping analogy, right? So when we plant the seed, whether that's content, whether that's building a new team, whether that's building a new architecture for how we're going to approach growth, the thing that we then start to think about is when the harvest shows up, it shows up in a much bigger reward than the seed that we put into the ground in the first place. Let me give you an example. When we start to see marketing ROI compound for the companies that we work with, there isn't a sort of go from 2 leads a day to 3 leads a day, from 3 leads a day to 4 leads a day, and so forth. No. When we start hitting the all cylinders in the strategy, we will get something we call a hockey stick type of growth. We will get something that looks like it's barely moving along, and then all of a sudden, it's like an airplane who gets to the end of the runway and just has liftoff. That's what happens in the long term. Now, I know many of you are saying to me right now, but how long does it take, Darrell? And the reality is, when you get the right architecture put in place, you get the right plan in place, you get the right strategy in place, and then you execute the right tactics, you are going to see that happen sooner than if you continue down a tactical path. The biggest mistake I see is many companies start down the right path and they grow weary of doing the right thing long enough in order to see the result. And it's sometimes when we make a new decision, when we make a new distinction, and we go down a new path, we have to stick to it long enough. You know, about 13 years ago, I was about 38 pounds heavier than I am today. Well, when I decided that I didn't want to carry that weight anymore, it wasn't that I could go to the gym 2 or 3 days and then look in the mirror and see something different. It was a process of change. It was a consistency over a long period of time that allowed me to drop the 38 pounds. And it wasn't just going to the gym. I needed all facets of the weight loss equation: diet, exercise, and recovery. And in many cases, some of you are just getting impatient with the process, the 3-pronged or 5-pronged or 6-pronged process, whatever it might be in your business, to just let the work do what the work does. And when you get patient, that will generate the ROI. So there are 4 pillars that I think about when we think about moving from a tactical mindset to a strategic mindset, and even more so, building in a new architecture for how we're going to operate. The first one is foundational, and so many of you jump right past it. And that is a period of analysis. That is a period of establishing the foundation of where are we right now. For those of you who are new here, the MindShift method is a philosophy that I bring to every project that we work on, every client that we entertain, and really how I live my life. The first step in this is foundational, and that is, let's make peace with the current facts. But in order to make peace with those facts, we have to really understand what they are. What have we done up until now? What do the numbers look like? Who is our buyer? Who is our buyer today? How are they moving different today? So a lot of times we jump into doing things without really building the foundational principles. When we get people that come to our agency, many established companies that have been around for 10, 15, 20 years, sometimes they are the hardest to work through this. See, if you're starting from zero, you have no filter, you have no barrier of resistance because you don't have anything. You're starting from zero. The challenge for many of you who are already doing 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, heck, even $1 million to $5 million, you have a history of having some success. And therefore you have a feeling that if we could just do a little more of that, we're going to have the exponential lift. So the first step is you've got to take foundational one and get that pillar in place. Everybody I talk to wants to skip by this step, but this step sets the foundation for everything that's going to come next. Pillar 2 in this equation is what we call asset development. Now, asset development may sound a little strange, but let me put it into another context. And that is, how do we take what your company is best in the world at? How do we take your subject matter expertise, your thought leadership as a brand, even if you're B2B, even if you're technical, even if you're SaaS, even if you're personal service, how do we start to break these components of your unique gift to the marketplace down into assets that we can then go begin to plant into this modern landscape of digital marketing or digital growth or digital transformation, whichever word you want to use. So many founders, CEOs, established companies, they just throw dollars at people, throw dollars at agencies, throw dollars at consultants, and then they don't want to participate in the process. And you know what I've heard? I'll hear that I've hired this person, this company, this agency, whoever, and they'll say, but they never understood our brand. They never understood our mission. They never really fully grasped the essence of what we were trying to communicate in the marketplace. And then when I ask the question, how much time and energy did you participate in the process? And they were like, oh, no, I wasn't involved. I just, I allocated the budget and I told them to do it. Well, when we work together, we believe that there is a requirement of the subject matter expertise, the leader, the thought leader, the founder, the person who brought the mission and birthed the idea of this company to be a part of this asset development and creation. Doesn't mean you have to be a part of every video. It doesn't mean you have to be a writer on every piece of email or every blog item or anything that's on social media. But your emphasis, your influence into how we develop this new architecture, we'll bring the architecture. You've got to bring the sauce, as they say in today's language. You've got to bring your unique gift to that. Now, there's an easy way to do that. We're not going to cover that here in this video, but we've developed a system over the years to get those who are super technical, those who are 20, 30 years removed from maybe the functional operation, and bring that bridge into this modern asset development. Pillar 3 is systems integration. Listen, you cannot run this growth curve, this growth model in a silo. You can't have disconnected components where someone is over here doing brand and someone over here is doing messaging and someone over here is doing tactics on growth and lead gen, demand gen. And you can't have the sales team back over there and have them out in the street doing their thing. Out in the street is just an analogy, y'all. It has to come together. There has to be some cohesiveness to the system. Everybody needs to be on the same wavelength in terms of what the outcome is going to look like. That's going to mean your technology. That's going to mean your CRM. That's going to mean how we communicate through email. That's going to mean how we communicate on social. That's going to mean how we communicate in customer acquisition and the sales and business development process. All of that needs to be thought through so that there is a coherence, if you will, across the organization. And let me be clear, I'm looking right at you right now. Established business owner, founder, CEO, it starts with you. It starts with your buy-in. It starts with your leadership, right? So whenever things are not happening right on the ground, unfortunately, the problem with us being as business owners, and I'm guilty, I'm right there. Oftentimes when it's not working, we want to blame the person, the product, the agency, the consultant for not getting it right. And the reality is we have to look ourselves hard in the mirror and say, it's all my fault. And I remember the first time I heard that in my leadership journey, and that is no matter where things go wrong, it's always your fault. And when it goes right, it's always we won, right? So when it goes well, it was all of us. But when it goes wrong, it's all on us. And that can be a little difficult. But the key is we must build systems that work together. I'm thinking back to a client that we had back in 2013 or 14, and the front of the house, let's call it the front of the house, wasn't involved in a lot of the back of the house, the marketing side, and there was just friction between the front of the house and the back of the house. We're just going to use those examples because I don't want to call out names of companies and people. But what was happening was they were doing a lot of this demand generation through digital, but the people at the front desk, the people on the front of the house, they were not allowed to be in the room during the decision. And I'm like, oh, no. Because if you've got demand gen happening from Google Ads or Facebook or SEO, which is what that was at that time, then they must know that the people calling in from an acquisition standpoint, from a new customer lead standpoint, these people are calling in from a different context. So therefore, their scripting must be different. Their handling of those calls must be different. That very simple analogy broke that company down for about 8 or 9 months until everybody got on the same page. So we can't say, oh, we're going to start running new ads on Google and optimize our SEO and our Google business profiles and all of these things that are going to bring cold strangers into our business. as leads, but our front of the house folks are only used to talking to referrals, or only used to talking to people who met us at a trade show. That's an idea of how we have to system integrate. Last but not least, pillar 4 is all about measurement, right? It's all about measurement. I will hear people, established business owners like you, say things to me like, we're not growing. Okay, well, what does that mean? I will hear things to say, well, I've invested $500,000 in our marketing and advertising last year, but we didn't grow. What does that mean, right? So in measurement, we must have both leading and lagging indicators, and we must have a holistic scorecard that allows us to understand what do those short-term metrics look like, what do those medium-term metrics look like, and what do those longer-term metrics look like. You know, at the beginning of this conversation, we talk about ROI. Well, how do we know where things are breaking down? In our world, we have a process called read from the right. Read from the right simply means, and this is changing as time goes on and new software comes out, but in most analytics packages online, you're going to see your conversions on the right-hand side of the ledger. Coming back, you're going to see something like a conversion rate. And then in front of that, you're going to see how many number of people converted, and then you're going to go back and forth. On the left-hand side, you're going to see things like the impressions that the ad got. You're going to see how many visits that the website got. You're going to see the time on the site and how many clicks did they, how many page views did they have? You know, was it an entry page or an exit page? And all of these other sorts of leading metrics, right? Well, in our agency, we have a simple philosophy. In our firm, we optimize from the right. We optimize from the right to the left. So we start at where the money happens and we work our way back to the left. So a lot of marketers, they approach it from, hey, let's just go get more traffic. Let's just go get more brand impressions. Let's run more ads. Let's post more on social. All of those are impression metrics to the left side of the equation. However, we spend our time on the right. And we work our way until we get the systems built properly from the right to the left. And that's a measurement strategy that a lot of the clients that come to us have just not heard of before, although it seems relatively simple. And it doesn't mean that getting more traffic is not important. It doesn't mean that getting more leads on the front end is not important. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't post more on social or whatever the case may be. What it means, though, is until we know what the impact will be over here, we stay focused on the right side of the ledger. We call it our right to left campaign optimization framework. So let's make this practical, shall we? Over, say, the next 90 days. Let me give you a little bit of an ROI roadmap. I'm going to look here at some notes because there's a lot to cover here. So in the first 30 days, whenever we're working with a client, the first thing we want to do is literally audit all of our digital marketing investments against the 4 pillars that we discussed today. Now, we have a very specific way we do this. We have a very specific framework to work through this, but you really want to take a look at not just the history of what's happening, but I know many of you are afraid to make a new big investment or a new commitment to an investment, whether it's a new firm like my company who comes in to work with you or anyone else out there that you're partnering with, because you feel like you've been burned. So the first thing we do is take our measurements in our audits. The second thing I'd recommend you do is take those and identify the quick wins that you can usually find in quick systems that are actually broken. Like, you can fix a few things right away. We have a model in our agency, we call it the 5 quick wins that generally we can find in a business within the first 90 days. So in our model, there are 5 of them that are like in our go-to playbook. Why do we want to do quick wins? We want to do quick wins so we can simply build trust that our longer term ideas are going to work for your business. So many of you tell me you signed these year contracts and finished the year contract and the company didn't deliver what they said they were going to deliver. Well, we have a model where we will deliver a very crystal clear outcome in the first 90 days. Another thing you can do in your first 90 days is fix the holes in your measurement processes, fix the tracking, fix the analytics packages, fix the numbers, and get clear, at least in what we call a minimum viable dashboard, so that you, the CEO, founder, or the executive, can actually know what the numbers are that matter. You don't need all the numbers. Of course, there's too many numbers in digital, but you need to know what numbers matter as you move forward. In day 30 through 60, this is going to be all about your asset optimization. This is going to be all about really understanding where are the digital assets that are available that you can use to continue your growth curve. What do you need in order to grow through this next period of transformation and transition. Digital assets is content. Let's just keep it what it is. You don't grow in digital today without content. And the old traditional way of doing things was you grew through people. Now, people will help create the content, but this isn't just about adding 5 more salespeople. This isn't about signing up for 12 more trade shows. This is about finding those tools and assets that will give you leverage across the multiple channels that your customers are hanging out on. So days 30 through 60, what do you have as a history of blogs? Which ones perform the best? What do you have as a matter of content? Which landing pages are doing the best? What content seems to bring the most people to your sales team? This sort of process through days 30 through 60 will help you identify what you have and where the gaps are for where you need to go. In days 60 through 90, it's really going to be all about looking about not just those quick wins, but how do we start thinking about systematized testing going forward? And I said systematized testing. You know, a lot of marketers, they run around and say, well, we've got to test for 90 days and get some data. What is that data going to tell us, right? If we're going to start testing, which I'm all about, we've got to do it in a systematized way. So here's a couple ways to think about it. Number one, on the first part of your test, maybe 50% of your activities must be testing what will drive higher ROI and today sales activities. Another 30% will be testing new and building new assets that you can use in your modern growth content strategy. And the last 20% are going to be on longer term positioning initiatives, meaning how do we think about what we're going to need 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line. Again, digital ROI doesn't happen overnight in terms of transitioning and transforming what your company may have been doing that has gotten you stuck at this point. So let's take a quick recap. So traditional ROI usually suffers because most people are doing traditional tactics, but they don't really have a holistic framework, a holistic strategy, and a system that they're operating against. There are 3 time frames that you really have to just become comfortable understanding, and that is the short-term time frame. What are those things that we can measure today? What are those activities we can measure today to know that we're making progress? Those midterm objectives, and which is really going to be where you're starting to plant those seeds in terms of your digital assets and your content, and your thought leadership. And then those longer term return on investment items when you're really building a system that's going to scale. And so again, there are kind of 4 pillars that we think about it is. And number 1 is that foundational work that we've got to do. Number 2 is that asset development component, which again, no business today that we work with can get away from creating a new batch and a new model of asset creation. Number 3 is systems integration, right? We've got to really start to look at systems. And again, I know many of you who are using big tools like Salesforce and ERPs and NetSuite and HubSpot, many of those things can't be changed overnight, but we've got to start to understand how do we reorganize our current systems into this new model. And step number 4 is our measurement models. We cannot move forward without a measurement framework. In our business, we are a little obsessed with the numbers. We make data-driven decisions, not subjective ones. And I know that everyone has some subjectivity to what we're going to do, but in a room full of a lot of thought leaders, we have to get to the numbers and let the numbers tell us what we're going to do next. Okay, so there's sort of a 90-day high-level framework for you to begin thinking about some of these concepts and ideas. Now, what I want you to do is come back next week as we dive a little deeper into digital transformation strategy. Specifically, what we find that established CEOs really can't afford to miss in today's speed of adoption in technology and modern digital growth landscape. Now, this is a part of a 6-part series that I'm doing. This is episode 2. If you haven't watched episode 1, just hop back to the video that might be pointing right here or might be pointing right there, and be back next week as we go a little deeper, because you won't want to miss what we talk about next week, which is a comprehensive growth strategy that we bring to many of our clients. This is the MindShift podcast. Wherever you're watching this right now, if you need help with some of these ideas, with these strategies, and you want a growth partner to sit with you, not just an agency who does tactics, not just a freelancer who executes things to do. As I started this episode, tactics before strategies, the noise before defeat. If you need some help, there's going to be a link somewhere around this video where you can reach out to our agency, jump on a free call, and we can talk about how we can help you with some of these ideas. I'll see you next week.